We call the Platting Board to order. It's the 2nd of January, 2013. And may I ask for roll call, please?
Wendell Story.
Here.
Steve Abel.
Here.
Ken Fuller.
Here.
Daniel Young.
Present.
Brent Cole.
Present.
Anthony Kane.
Here.
Trevor Edmondson.
And for the record, Trevor has an excused absence.
Mr. Chairman, we can barely hear you folks.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
First item on the agenda is agenda changes, and we have in the case S11496-7 Eagle Crossing. This is going to be postponed for 1 month until February 6th, 2013. If there's anybody here tonight for that case, it's going to be postponed. May I have a positive motion to postpone this, please? Mr. Story and Mr. Cole seconds. Is there any discussion? Any opposition? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. Next item on the agenda is special order of business disclosures. Excuse me. The next order on the agenda is approval of the minutes and action summaries. May I have a positive motion, please? Mr. Cole and Mr. Kane seconds. Is there any discussion? Is there any opposition? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the disclosures. Are there any disclosures tonight? Mr. Story.
Yes, in case S11960-1, I feel that I do have a conflict of interest. I am in have other dealings with Mr. Hyde, the owner of the property, and feel that it would be prudent at this time to recuse myself from this case.
Thank you. May I have a positive motion directing Mr. Story to participate? Mr. Cole and Mr. Kane seconds. Mr. Cole, would you speak to your motion?
Given Mr. Story's comments that he doesn't feel that he can view this, I do not intend to vote for my motion on this issue.
Is there any other discussion? Since there's opposition, we'll put this to a vote. A yes vote directs Mr. Story to participate. A no vote directs him to recuse himself, or be recused, excuse me. In the case S11960-1 resolution point, Mr. Story is recused. Are there any other disclosures, please? Mr. Cole. Mr. King?
Mayor, I feel I've got to disclose also, I've got ongoing business relationships with Mr. Hyde in light of this letter and him being represented by Tim Potter. I feel that it's in the best interest that I thank you. It's in the best interest that I disclose that I have a financial interest in other related matters with Mr. Hyde. I don't feel I could be partial in this case either, so I just want to, I don't have any financial dealings with this case in particular or his lot, but just other entities that he and I are involved in.
Okay, thank you. May I have a positive motion directing Mr. Keynes to participate? Mr. Story, will you speak to your motion, please? Oh, excuse me, in that case. Hit on the lower left, on the floor. Lower left. If your display is locked up, on the lower left corner where it says on the floor, hit that button and that should clear the display. And now I ask again for a positive motion to direct, then Mr. Fuller, this is to direct Mr. Keynes to participate, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and Mr. Abel seconds?
Yes. Since he's expressed a conflict of interest, I would petition that Mr. Keynes would participate. Hello, can you hear me?
Just get a little closer to your microphone.
Requiring Mr. Keynes to participate in case S11960-1, resolution point. I will not be supporting that motion.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Since there's opposition, we'll vote a positive, or a yes vote will direct Mr. Keynes to participate. A no vote will recuse Mr. Keynes. And that vote failed 5-0. Mr. Keynes, you're recused from testifying at resolution point case. Are there any other disclosures or conflicts of interest? Mr. Story.
Yes, in case S-11961-1, I would like to disclose that my firm, R&M Consultants, is under contract with the municipality of Anchorage, and Mr. Hale, who is employed by R&M Consultants, is here to represent the petitioner tonight. I do have professional and financial involvement in the case, therefore I would like to recuse myself from participating.
Thank you. May I have a positive motion directing Mr. Story to participate? Mr. Keynes and Mr. Fuller seconds. Would you speak to your motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In light of Mr. Story's testimony, I move that he participate in case S11961-1.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Is there any opposition? Okay. Okay. Since there's opposition to the motion, we're going to vote. A yes vote directs Mr. Story to participate, and a no vote directs Mr. Story to be recused. That motion failed 5-0. Mr. Story is recused from case 11961-1 Legacy Point subdivision, tracks B1 and B2. Are there any other disclosures or conflicts of interest? Okay, I have a disclosure. In the case S11961-1 Legacy Point, my firm has business dealings with the petitioner's representative. My firm has done business with a landowner on other properties, and I have worked on this property evaluating drainage conditions for a previous owner. I have no financial or personal interest in the matters before the board. I can remain impartial, in fact, in action as a member of this board without personal bias. My past involvement and personal interest will not prevent me from fairly evaluating the facts of this case. May I have a positive motion directing me to participate, please? Mr. Fuller.
Yes, I would move to direct the chairman to participate in case number S-11961-1 based on testimony he's provided that he does not have a substantial interest and that he can be fair and impartial in the judging of the matter before us.
And is there a second to the motion? Mr. Fuller? Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Is there any discussion? Is there any opposition? Then I'm directed to participate. Are there any other disclosures or conflicts of interest? Hearing and seeing none. We have for the case for resolution point, which is, where do you have the number? Here it is. S11960-1. We only have 4 members tonight, and so we don't have a quorum, so we won't be able to hear that case. And for case S11961-1 Legacy Point Subdivision, we have 5 members, which is a short board, and the petitioner has the option of being heard tonight or delaying this till the next public hearing, which is in a month. Would the representative for Legacy come forward, please? Thank you.
Point of order. Mr. Chair, staff has a point of order.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question about which cases can be heard tonight. Staff heard that the first case on the agenda, S11960, there were 2 recusals.
Yes.
So I looked in code. It reads, action by the board shall require the favorable vote of a majority of the fully constituted board. The fully constituted board shall include all appointed members of the board not excused for conflicts of interest in the board action. So my reading is that the fully constituted board is 9 people, minus 2 recusals is 7 people, majority of 7 is 4, so the first case can be heard.
Mr. McLaughlin, I do understand that there would be enough to hear the case, but there are not enough votes to approve the case. You still have to have 5 members to approve the case. You have to have 5 yes votes to approve a case. So when you have 9 members and you have 2 conflicts of interest, the revised full membership is 7, which drops the majority vote to 4.
Right.
However, these numbers do not apply to bare quorums for approval of cases.
Could you explain to me then, the paragraph before what I just read, it said a majority of the full membership of the board shall constitute a quorum for the transaction of business. So a majority of the 7 is 4.
Actually, Let me go to the next page. Hold on just a second. It takes all the votes of all the members who can participate to approve the item. Give me 1 second to
Sure,
clarify.
yeah.
No, so I'd say let's just move forward if we can. If they can't get it, then we'll delay. Do you want to speak? I can speak. Okay. Yeah, I could just hang out. Sure. Yeah. Whatever you want to do. Okay. Some people like that.
Mr. McLaughlin, I realize that it would only take 4 votes to approve it, but a quorum is defined as the fully constituted membership of 9 to open a meeting of the body, and conflicts of interest do not apply, and 5 members would have to be present. So technically, we only have 4 members. We don't have a quorum.
Well, you know,
We
I've
can
never
take a
encountered
break.
this before. I just, if I were to reread that paragraph that I read, the way I understand it to mean is that the fully constituted board, 9 members, and it says that excluding people that are board members who are excused for conflict of interest. We've had 2 recusals.
Right.
Yeah, and you
Which
understand
we-
my rationale? So.
Which reduces the full membership from 9 to 7. That is correct.
And then a majority of that is 4. So
4.
where do you get that the?
Can we take just a brief 5 minutes?
We're going to take a brief 5-minute recess for technical considerations.
Ask a question real quick. Hold on just a minute. She'll be right back.
Yeah, no, this is.
Meeting will reconvene. We have clarification. We do have a sufficient number of people on the board tonight to hear both cases. However, for the first case, for Resolution Point, it would require, there will be 4 members presiding on the board, and it will require all 4 members voting positive for that case to be successful. In the second case, at Legacy Point, there will be 5 members on the board that can vote, and it will require all 5 members to vote in a positive manner for that to go forward. So the petitioners for both of these cases have the option to postpone until there's more people present on the board, which will hopefully be next month. I really apologize for this. May we have the petitioner for Resolution Point approach the podium, please? State your name for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ken Ayers of Lonsbury & Associates, representing Hickle Investment. We would like to take the postponement for a month. We believe we can solve both the reclusions that were here tonight if you give us a month to do that.
Well, that would help a lot. So, yes, you may.
Thank you.
May have the postponement. Grant.
Thank you.
And may I have the petitioner for Legacy Point? State your name, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I'm Dave Hale, R&M Consultants, representing AWU, the petitioner. We'd like to proceed, please.
Okay. You're allowed to proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman? It's not of you, it's of him? Or are you his boss?
The meeting is still in order, and I asked everybody who is not going to participate tonight to quietly leave the room so we can continue on with our business. Thank you. And please keep your materials for the case for next month. Okay, next item on the agenda is public hearings. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Platting Board at its meetings is that after the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons wishing to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission Rules of Procedure. Petitioners, including all of his or her representatives, have 10 minutes. Part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. Representatives of groups, community councils, PTAs, etc., have 5 minutes, and individuals have 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the board. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the board. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to the action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based upon the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503 or an appeal of the board's final appealable decision per AMC 21.30. And we will now start with case, S 11961-1 Legacy Point Subdivision. And may we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility is seeking to subdivide one tract into 2 tracts to accommodate a future water tank site on one of the tracts. A future AWU water tank will require a conditional use approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission in the future if that were to take place. The department recommends approval of this subdivision from 1 tract into 2, subject to conditions 1 through 8 on page 7 of your packet. I'd like to point out that there are late comments that were laid on the table. They arrived this afternoon. We've duplicated them and set them in before you, laid on the table. There's one set of late comments. This is, very simple subdivision. The only conditions that are worth noting are condition 2. I wanted to point out it says revise the location of the 50-foot wide stream protection setback so that it is centered on the stream, the location of the stream. The streams have a habit of moving, and so with this plat, the dedication of the stream protection setback, 25 feet either side, because the stream is moved, it just needs to be investigated so that it's properly, the 50-foot wide stream protection setback is properly centered on the stream. So that's condition number 2 on page 7 of the packet. Condition 3, dedicate a 25-foot wide trail easement for the old Moen Trail. Condition 4, resolve with the non-motorized transportation coordinator the need for the section of the 10-foot wide trail easement along the northwest portion of the petition site. If you look at the plat, you'll notice that there's a dotted line showing Old Moen Trail, and then there's another dotted line showing a 10-foot trail easement, and they run parallel to each other about 50 feet apart or some amount. And it may be appropriate to remove the duplicative trail that's just sort of shown along the boundary of the tract, because it's appropriate to have that 10-foot wide trail easement around the other portion of the tract, but once it intersects with the Old Moen Trail, it may be appropriate just to have one trail and not both. It may be some wasted space there. So that's the derivation of that condition number 4. And then the last condition that I'll speak to is number 5. It says remove the 50 and 100-foot wide buffer screening easements and retain the 10-foot wide buffer landscape easement along the full length of the east lot boundary. So buffer landscaping along Golden View Drive is appropriate, 10-foot buffer landscaping. The 50 and 100-foot wide buffer screening easements that are shown around the proposed location of a water tank It's the department's position that it would be more appropriate for those screening easements to come with the conditional use for the water tank site. If they're dedicated with this plat, and then the property is used for something else, it'll take another platting action to remove those dedicated easements. So it's more appropriate that those easements for screening are addressed at the same time as the conditional use, which looks at the entirety of the water tank site. It's premature, we believe, to deal with that now. That's all I have to say. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to speak to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Hearing and seeing, are you sure there's no questions of staff? Okay. We'll now open this process up to the public hearing. And will the petitioner's representative please step forward? Again, state your name for the record. And would you like to, if you would like to reserve some time for rebuttal, tell us how much you would like to reserve, and we can set that on the timer for you.
Good evening. My name is Dave Hale, again with R&M Consultants representing AWWU. I'm here with Mr. Brian Boz and Mr. Paul Hatcher. They are the petitioners. We have no objection to the staff recommendations on this case, but we would like to reserve rebuttal time as much as we have left, and we stand by and answer questions as needed.
Thank you. Are there, yes, Mr. Cole.
I'm sorry. Did you get a chance to see the comments that were provided to us today?
We did the late submitted comments.
So, yes.
We did.
And can you give me a sense of how long this has been in the planning to have this water tank installed here?
If it's all right, I'd like to defer to Mr. Brian Boz. He can provide some history, some background, and speak to that.
Okay.
Through the chair, my name is Brian Boss. I'm the Planning and Development Services Manager of the Anchorage Water Wastewater Utility. To answer your question, we began looking at this site technically for the right place to position a future tank as part of the 2009 Golden View Design Study Report, in which we looked at a number of reservoir sites, this being one of them.
Ultimately, when was the decision made, or has a decision been made to place the reservoir here?
No. Yes and no. Yes, technically we know that this is the right spot on the 13-acre site as it exists to place a reservoir. However, we do not have a plan to actually build the reservoir at this time. Plans to build the reservoir would be subject to growth of the area needing water. At this time, we have enough water storage in the area to provide service. It would just be if there is more development that needs a future water demand, and that's what would trigger a future project to construct the reservoir.
Mr. Cole, do you still have questions?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes, the comment refers to Tract A and a main entrance. Where on that plat are they proposing to enter Tract A? Do you have any idea?
Through the chair, it's on the north. It's on the northern border of the property we have is Tract B1. Is that correct? Yeah. North of the stream.
Mr. Fuller, did you have additional questions? Are there any other questions of the petitioner? I have a question. What would be the impact to move the tank to Tract B2 rather than Tract B1 as the public comments that came in late today suggest?
The area we've selected for the tank is based on elevation to serve specific pressure zones in the system. The further to the south you move the tank, the further you drop the elevation of that tank, which means it can serve much less of a service area. It basically makes this unusable for a future reservoir site for us if we move it further south.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions of the petitioner? Thank you, and you have 9 minutes and 56 seconds for rebuttal. You did good. I now open this up to public. Is there anybody from the public wishing to testify?
Hi, I'm John Weddleton. It's Weddleton, and I'm here as the chair of the Hillsides Home and Landowners Organization, generally called HALO. And I just want to get some clarification on the stream setback. It says on page 5 of your packet that the applicant has indicated a 50-foot stream setback, which meets the requirement of the Hillside District Plan, which is correct. But on the staff comments, it says revise the location of the 50-foot wide stream protection setback so it's centered on the location of the stream. And that implies 25 feet either side. And I just want to make sure we're talking about 50 feet either side for the stream.
Staff, do you have a comment on or a response to that?
Yes, through the chair. Thank you for the question, Mr. Weddleton. The condition of approval says 25 foot either side of the stream, not 50 foot either side of the stream, and that comes from the subdivision regulations that require, from the supplementary district regulations in code that require 25 feet either side. I think that if I can find where it says 50 foot either side in the Hillside District Plan, I'm speculating that it's possible that the board could then require greater than what's in code. But what's supposed to happen is that once a plan is adopted and becomes policy, that the code should be updated to match the plan. And that hasn't happened, as you know. So I'm going to look for where that says that, and you may be able to point me to it faster. Right?
Yeah, I can help find that. It's actually stated twice in there. Once is very clearly in a sidebar. But the Hillside District Plan, which is the guiding document, clearly specifies 50 feet either side. And at this point, with the Title 21 rewrite, the Assembly Subcommittee has accepted that for the Hillside area, it would be 50 feet on either side. So that hasn't been adopted, but that's what will be going forward to the Assembly in just 2 weeks, that recommended 50 feet. So I would recommend and request that you do 50 feet either side, and I'll help Mr. McLaughlin find that citation.
Thank you.
Well, the new code will have 50 feet probably. Hey, John, can you show me?
I have a question for staff. On the map, the only stream I'm seeing on this parcel is in the extreme northern part. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to testify? Please step forward, state your name for the record.
Chairman, Board, Craig Bennett with S4. I'm representing John Bergeron. He's the owner of the parcel just to the west, Tract A, Legacy Point. I'd like to hand out the approved site plan.
Proceed.
And we're just objecting to the placement of the water tank asking if it could be moved to the southerly lot instead of at our approved location right there at the entrance.
Excuse me, did you have any more to, so you're just waiting for us to ask you questions?
That's pretty much it, just the placement of the water tank.
Okay, are there any questions? I have a question.
Okay.
So where the water tank is shown on the proposed plat tonight is in the northern 1/3 of the property.
Correct.
And the exact site hasn't been determined.
Correct.
And we've heard that the topography, which isn't shown, would restrict its placement going to the south. Do you have a suggestion of where the tank could go that would benefit both parcels? The parcel to the west that you're representing and the parcel that AWU is trying to put their tank on?
We haven't looked at an alternate location of the water tank, just how it affects the entrance to the proposed development.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Cole?
How does it affect? I don't understand that.
Just the owner of Tract A is fearful that a large water tank right at the entrance to his project is going to be a deterrent.
The way I'm looking at it, you own this, which property, you own this property right here?
Correct.
And where's the road that is going to be where is it going to be an eyesight for what?
The main road comes in just to the north.
Up here or up here?
Right there, yes, sir. And it comes down along the west side of the property.
Along here?
Correct.
But have you known that they were going to put in a water tank? Is this the first you found out about it?
The location.
Have you known that they were going to put a water tank in this area someplace?
There's been talk about it. This is the first that I've seen of it. And the owner was John Bergeron was just worried about it.
I'm just trying to figure out, how long have you known? Because it seems like the owner could have taken steps to figure out if there's a better place to put it or to give us a plan that would say if you put it in this place, it would still have this pressure.
I don't know how long he's known.
And the handout that you just gave us is essentially the same thing as the email or the public comment that we received also. Is there any difference between?
It should be the same.
And page 2, what would that be?
That's the approved site plan for Tract A.
And you gave that to us for what?
Just to show you the entrance coming in.
Mr. Cole, just because I have familiarity with this property, it was known years ago that a water tank was proposed to go in. However, at that time, the water tank was going to go on the east side of Golden View and not on the Legacy Point property.
Okay.
Which would have been a higher elevation and more pressure. Are there any other questions?
Questions. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
I had one. Sorry. I have a question. The distance from your road to the tank is how far?
I don't have a plan of the tank.
It appears to be about 300 feet and about 200 feet to the west or to the east of your road. So how high is this tank going to be?
I don't have plans of the tank.
And how, we don't have the decision of where to put the tank, but they have screening easements that are yet to be determined when they file for their So, I mean, if the tank is less than 30 feet or 40 feet high, any tree is going to block that, and you're 300 feet south of your entrance and 200 feet to the east of your entrance. Other than the fact that it's up in the high part of the ground, I just don't see with the screening easements that they're going to require that it's even a consideration. But that's for you. Thanks.
All right. Thanks.
Any other questions? Please state your name for the record.
I'm Diane Holmes, and I have to apologize for what the council, how they gave you their comments. Usually they're much nicer on letterhead, not online, and easier to read. I'd like to talk about this important buffers. Staff does not recommend keeping the 50 to 100-foot buffers, yet I'm told there's no code for water tank buffering. So until the CU, even when the CU comes up for review, so we could end up with very little screening. If you agree with staff on this point, I ask that some sort of note be included that can help ensure that there will be substantial buffers when the CU comes up. Or, of course, you could deny the staff's request to remove these easements. And I believe staff agrees with at least putting a note, but it's probably not very legal. I was going to give you a little history lesson of the frustrations that the public has with Heritage Land Bank and buying the requirement that non-tax supported agencies have to buy land, their parcels from Heritage Land Bank. But in light of the last person's comments and Mr. Bergman's proposal, I'd like to give you another little bit of history. I see that what is before you is the senior housing plat, which I thought that had expired. At the time that this plat came up, Mr. Bergman did not own the land. He now owns it. He's gotten it back. And the road that you see here, the LRTP requires a collector road through this area. It's exceedingly important because there's no other way except Rabbit Creek Road or the very circuitous Potter Valley Road to get off the hillside. And so that collector is very needed. Unfortunately, in all of the previous plats for this area, some of which never saw the light of day, and obviously this one may not either, the road has always been the same. It's been designed as a subdivision road, not as a collector road. So the world may change between the time when Mr. Bergman brings forth this plat. And I would say that there's a lot of different areas where he could bring his entrance, and always his entrances are very dramatic. They don't have to be next to the water tank. In fact, there's a lot of good areas where he could make his entrance. However, it gives more reason why perhaps these screening, the buffering easements need to be there. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Cole.
Through the chair.
Proceed.
I didn't catch, are you with an organization?
No, I'm no longer on the board formally of the Rabbit Creek Council, but I go to all the meetings.
Thank you.
And I live there.
Mr. McLaughlin, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A number of issues have just been raised by the speakers, and I wanted to speak to them and a couple new ones. First of all, let me just say that when the board closes the public hearing and makes a motion for approval, because the motion's always made in the positive, then it will take a unanimous vote in order for the plat to be approved. If that motion for approval, if any one person doesn't vote for approval of the plat, then it's dead, and the case is over. You can't have a revote or whatever. So it would be important for a member of the board who had concerns to voice them sort of early on before a vote is taken, so that the board could maybe look for a way if they decided they wanted to continue to the next meeting or look at other options. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then I brought with me the Planning and Zoning Commission's resolution of approval for the site plan that Mr. Bennett spoke to, and that these late comments addressed. These late comments say two things. One, that they don't want the water tank to be near the entrance to where the entrance road for this senior housing development. And two, they take issue with why AWU as a public utility is being treated differently from a private utility. Let me just address the second question first because it's easier. Golden View Drive is already constructed. It's a collector street. The subdivider is not required to improve it per our subdivision regulations. Also, this is a peripheral road. It's peripheral to the subdivision. It's not internal. So there's no requirement for the subdivider to make improvements to that road. So that's just dealing with that. In regards to the senior housing, which was approved in 2006, I have 2 copies of the resolution with me, and I can hand one to the board if they're interested. But so in 2006, the senior housing site plan was approved, a resolution granting final approval for a site plan for housing for the elderly in the PLI district. That was approved, October 22nd, 2007. There were several hearings, and one of the conditions of approval, F, it says the building permit for phase 1 must be obtained and construction begun within 5 years of the effective date of the final Planning and Zoning Commission resolution of approval approving the master plan. It's a long condition, but essentially it says that if they don't have a building permit within 5 years of the approval, then this expires. The way Ms. Holmes spoke to it, it's null and void. So I don't know if we could do 5 years from October 22nd, 2007. It appears that it has expired. Now, this was a very controversial case, and maybe there's some. I went to the original file as a big box of stuff, and maybe there's an appeal pending or something. But we have no guarantees that senior housing will ever be developed at this location. But even if there was, AWU's property here, if they were a private developer, they would be able to subdivide the property. And, it just would seem odd that the Platting Board could be in a position where they would not approve a subdivision that meets all the requirements of the subdivision regulations because of a hypothetical development that may or may, is not incompatible with this subdivision. I hope that I explained that clearly. And I think that you could also, my final point is just to look at Mr. Bennett's drawing and to look at where it really is this entrance in relationship, because he talks about this being near the entrance, and it appears that it's quite a distance away. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cole. Mr. Cole, could you hold your question until we're done with the public hearing, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask staff questions?
Understood.
Well, that's okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to testify? Anybody else at all? And We have, how many minutes? You have 9 minutes and 56 seconds for rebuttal. Would you like to use your time for rebuttal?
I'd like to say that we don't object to any of the buffers. I mean, it's in, I think, AWU's best interest to have buffers for the tank, and I think that's it. I think that staff explained it pretty well, unless you guys have any questions.
One moment. Would you state your name again for the audio files?
I'm David Hale.
Thank you, Mr. Hale. And Mr. Fuller, you had a question?
Yeah, what is the potential height of this tank?
Through the chair, Mr. Fuller, as I said, it's not designed yet, so we don't know the exact height. I would estimate, based on our preliminary planning, to be about 20 feet. Right now, based on that Golden View Design Study Report I mentioned before, we had the base elevation at 816 feet above sea level and the mid-tank level at 827 feet above sea level. But there's all sorts of different options as far as building a tank where we could increase the diameter and shorten it a little bit. So there's opportunity.
It's not a 50 or 100-foot tank.
No, it isn't.
Very low profile.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of the petitioner's representative?
Oh, did you want to know my name? No.
Yes.
My name is Brian Boss, last name B-A-U-S.
And are there any other questions? Of the petitioner's representative? No. Hearing and seeing none, the public hearing portion is closed. The matter now rests with the board. Are there questions for staff? Mr. Cole, you may ask. I'm sorry that I interrupted earlier.
No, and I appreciate it. So, through the chair, staff, I pointed out page 56 and the comments that we have from the Rabbit Creek Community Council. Kind of made it a point to try to be cognizant of anything that the councils bring to us. I have limited knowledge. These people have intimate knowledge. Have we addressed their issues here?
Yes, we have, Mr. Cole. If I could speak to them.
Yes.
The first one, Mr. Mike Kenny says, depict and dedicate a public trail easement for the old Moen Trail. That will be accomplished with this plat. That trail exists, and it will be formalized with a dedication with this plat. The second thing, it says vegetative screening easements do not appear to extend along adjacent to the stream, and that's where their condition of approval says that every little turn of that stream, it will be centered on the stream protection setback 25 feet, which is in code. So that's also taken care of with this plat. The third one, it says extend screening buffer to include the stream. Extend screening buffer to include the stream. So I think that's a continuation of the one before it. Their final point that Mr. Kinney makes is buffering shown on the plat for potential water tank should be considered a minimum. Additional screening should be added during the site plan process. So what he's saying is that the 100-foot and 50-foot screening easements to buffer adjacent land uses, the abutting neighbors, from the water tank, what's shown on this should be considered a minimum, and that there should be additional screening provided at the time of the conditional use permit for the site plan review. And I guess the staff's recommending something maybe the opposite of what he's saying. Is we're saying that AWU is going to offer those screening easements at the time of a conditional use permit when the site plan for a water tank, the height, dimension of the tank, all of the access from Golden View Drive to the water tank, all of those are handled by the Planning and Zoning Commission in a future request, if ever. this is just really reserving a spot for a water tank.
And I don't have any problem with that, and I understand the philosophy. The last thing I asked is, have you been able to determine whether condition 2 should be 50 foot or 100 foot when we make our motion?
The staff recommends 25-foot stream protection setback as stated in code, and I can show you the
Number 2 says 50-foot wide stream, 25 on each side.
That's right.
But I thought you were checking on that.
Thank you for your patience, Mr. Cole. Let's not try and hurry through this. I'm just going to read what it says so that we have it all out there. 45. Stream protection. Yeah, okay. So the zoning regulations, Anchorage Municipal Code, Title 21.45.210, stream protection setback. It says width. A stream protection setback shall be a minimum of 25 feet either side of the stream. It goes on from there. But that's what our current code says. Members of the public pointed out that the Assembly may approve a change in the code that's pending in front of the Assembly. I think it begins next Tuesday. And they may approve 50-foot stream protection setback either side instead of 25 feet. And then these members of the public also pointed out that the Hillside District Plan says setbacks on page 630, setbacks, minimum setback for water course identified in contemporary municipality of Anchorage mapping shall be 50 feet horizontally from ordinary high water mark either side of the stream and 10 foot horizontally from the edge of each side of drainage ways. And this, I believe, is a named stream instead of a drainage way. So the Hillside District Plan appears to say that, streams should have 50-foot protections, drainage ways should have 10-foot. 50-foot either side for 100-foot centered on stream or 20-foot. This is a wider margin than what's in code. The department recommends the 25 feet. However, if the board finds that they want to approve greater than that, they can find support in the Hillside District Plan's recommendation. I'm sorry I can't be more definitive than that.
But I mean, is it true that it may be voted on in 2 weeks and increased to 50 feet?
That's correct. That may not take effect for 2 more years.
Okay.
I mean, our department is probably supporting that 50 feet, but there are other members of the Assembly that, there's just a lot of interest because these sort of, that's all I have to say.
Mr. Cole is a hydrologist. I can tell you the 25-foot and the 50-foot are arbitrary numbers, and they should be, just my opinion, not the city's opinion, they should be based on engineering calculations, which incorporate the slope, the soil type, the vegetation type, and the amount of water. So but the city has historically used the arbitrary numbers. It's my recommendation right now that we follow the existing code. However, if the board chooses to go wider, then we should discuss that. And the other thing I want to say about this upper portion of the creek on Legacy is it's fairly stable and narrow. It's not very steep. And I believe a 25-foot setback on either side is adequate for this portion. However, if you look on the map, it's showing a 50-foot setback farther down, and that's where the drainage way is much steeper. And that if the 10-foot applied, that wouldn't be from the 10-foot wouldn't be from the creek center line, it would be from the top of the drainage way. So you'd be looking at a V like this, and that 10 feet would be from here over. So that would be greater than 25 feet from the center if you were farther down this valley. So that's just my input on this, if that helps.
Thank you, and I very much appreciate that. My one question is, would it be possible for us to ask the petitioner if they have a position one way or the other on this?
Yes, we can.
I would like to do that.
Mr. Braz.
Through the chair, we do not object to the additional easement, and you want to?
David Hale again. There is dedicated 100-foot easement. I think what we're talking about is I need to have our crews go survey this thing, and we would this 100-foot easement is per this plat 2006-10. It exists in its current location. I believe that the creek's going to fall within that, so there will be reserved 100 feet. If it looks like it's moved, I think what staff is recommending that we cover it with at least 25 if it was to move out of this 100-foot corridor. Is that correct of staff?
I apologize for the interruption. So, Mr. Cole, it's just like Mr. Hale said, he's offered 50 feet either side, and then staff has made the mistake of calling for 25-foot either side. Staff would like to revise the condition to say 50 feet either side.
And we have 50 feet either side.
Yeah, they've offered it.
Underlying.
And we just want it centered on the location of the stream because the stream may have changed. So that's an error. I apologize.
For clarification, that would be 50 feet on either side of the stream center line.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I don't mean to be, but I just wanted to make sure if there was a reason that you had to object, I wouldn't have any problem. But I just wanted, in my own mind, to know what your position was. I appreciate everybody giving us the consensus. Thank you.
May I have a positive motion on this case, please? We'll still have opportunity for discussion. Mr. Cole.
In the case of S11961-1 Legacy Point subdivision, I would request to subdivide one tract of land into two tracts of land. Would move to approve the plat for 18 months, subject to, and these conditions are outlined in pages 7 and 8 in our packet, but number 1, resolve utility easements. As I understand it, number 2, revise the location of the 50-foot either side of the stream protection setback so that it is centered on the location of the stream. Number 3, dedicate a 25-foot wide trail easement for the Old Moan Trail. 4, resolve the non-motorized transportation coordinator the need for the section of the 10-foot trail easement along the northwest portion of the petition site. 5, remove the 50 and 100-foot wide buffer screening easements and retain the 10-foot wide buffer landscape easement along the full length of the east lot boundary, and submit to PM&E a grading and drainage plan and resolve the need to dedicate the drainage easements. Number 7, make the following drafting change the notation about the Seward Highway. And then number 8, place the following notes on the plant, and that would be, I don't believe I need to read those, but A through G on pages 7 and 8.
Thank you. And Mr. Kange, seconds. Would you speak to your to your motion, please.
Thank you. Tonight, we've heard the testimony of the petitioner through several of its representatives, the testimony of which supports the approval of the plat as requested. There has been some testimony given in opposition, but it appears to me that the concerns mentioned are either unwarranted or have been resolved by the conditions that are being placed on the approval of the plat. So I will be voting for this because I believe the packet, the information that supports it, and the testimony we received today supports that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? I have just for clarification on item number 2, which states revise the location of the 50-foot wide stream protection setback so that it is centered on the location of the stream. I would like to clarify that to be the centered on the center line of the stream, just so it's precise. Do I have to ask for an amendment to the motion?
I concur. I concur.
Thank you. I have a question for staff. Staff, can we request or put on a limit of the height of the tank so that it doesn't exceed a certain threshold if we were to place that on?
That's beyond the Platting Board's purview. The request before the board is a subdivision, and a future site plan conditional use will be going to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review. They have a lot of experience with reviewing those. But no, the board can't.
Thank you for the clarification. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Mr. Fuller.
Yes, for staff, through the chair, please. The easement that's shown for the drainage, is that currently on the plat that exists now? Because we're not addressing anything on Tract A, correct?
That's correct.
So that easement already exists. You're just memorializing that it's still going to exist in the new tract?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Fuller, we're specifically stating that it can move, but it's going to be based on the center line of the stream. Oh, it won't wander out of Tract A. That's fairly incised. So, okay. So, are there any other discussion? Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. Where do I start? Yeah. I want to read into the record the appeal process. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date of the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based on the record made at the hearing and at the request. And the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision within 20 days of the final appealable decision, and an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503, or an appeal of the board's final appealable decision per AMC 21.30. And we are now down to...
Mr. Chairman, are you going to proceed to item G on your agenda? If so, may I speak?
I'm sorry, that requires a written request to staff before it can get on the agenda.
Staff or you?
To staff. So the next item is reports, and from the chair. Oh, Mr. McLaughlin, did you have a question or?
Yes, Mr. Young, Mr. Chair, just a point of information for the board. The boards and commissions don't see a lot of requests for appearances or persons to be heard. The important piece of information regarding those is that the person speaking is not permitted to, they're granted, it's either 3 or 5 minutes to speak, but they're not permitted to speak to an issue that has to do with a case that was heard on the night on the same agenda. So that is to say that a person has 3 minutes to speak to a case. They can't then speak to an issue related to that case under a person's to be heard. It has to be. Their comments are limited to something that was not on the agenda for that evening. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is reports, and from the chair, we are short 2 board members, and I have corresponded with the mayor's office several times requesting additional board members so we don't get short boards like we have tonight. And I talked about conflicts of interest, eliminating some of us so that it creates short boards. I offered the names of 2 people who were potentially interested in serving. The mayor's office didn't have time last month to take this up. And so there's an opportunity, if anybody who serves on the board now knows somebody who's interested in serving, there's probably in the next 2 weeks, there's still an opportunity to submit more applications and a resume to the mayor's office. And Mr. McLaughlin, could that be through you, or does it go directly to the mayor's office?
It can be through the department. We're accepting applications in every way.
Thank you. So that's my report. I urge you, if you know somebody who's willing to serve on this board, to encourage them to apply. Are there any other business? Yes, there is.
When you receive your packet or your electronic packet, I would very definitely urge you to check the petitioners and the owners before you do anything else. And if you think that there's a perceived conflict that you're going to be recused from, would you please email staff, respond to that email, and let us know so that we can, we're not in a situation where we're short at the very last minute. We can plan ahead, and we can actually approach the petitioner if there is going to be an actual, we can tell whether it's going to actually be a conflict, and we can, the planner can approach the petitioner and run that by them and see whether or not they're still interested in proceeding, and gives the petitioner a heads up that there's an issue. So do remember to do that, please. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard? On the board, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Cole, or Cage, excuse me, and I'm sorry. And we are adjourned. Thank you.